Hey everybody, welcome to TBC Plays. I'm the Brit Canuck, a long-time EQ and MMO player, and we now know a new TLP is heading our way in 2022, so I'm carrying on my series of videos where I show you what to hunt, where to camp, what loot to aim for, and how to complete those hunter achievements. Today we are diving down to the Hole, otherwise known as the ruins of Old Paineel. Now, this zone is interesting on a TLP because it does become available in Classic, but it's actually not a Classic zone, and I think you can really tell that just from looking at the aesthetics of it. This zone actually unlocked originally partway through Kunark, so it had a lot of the artistic style and upgrades that came with Kunark. Now, on the TLP, it doesn't actually open straight away. It's not available right from day one. You have to wait until Vox and Nagi have been killed. Now, usually a guild will rush to do those as soon as they've hit level 46 and have enough players to be able to get it down. And on previous TLPs like Mischief and Aradun, this was done within a couple of days. So as long as you're not racing, chances are you're going to be finishing, say, from level 45 to 50 in the Hole, and that's a good thing because the XP here is way better than trying to level up to 50, say in Lower Guk or in Sol B, or even in some of the other spots like Ocean of Tears. And the reason for that is the Hole really is tuned for a slightly higher level. You will see mobs here. I think trash mobs can go up to like level 54 with the rock golems. It is considerably harder than those. A group can easily wipe to a bad pull or bad spawns even if 2 or 3 rock golems come at the same time. It definitely is a high risk, high reward kind of a zone in that sense. But having said that, this is where you will want to come to finish your leveling. And how to get to the Hole. Most commonly people will be coming in from the Druid Spires because the Hole is located right on the other side of the world and where you've probably done most of your leveling, and you'll probably want to grab a port here from the Commons Tunnel where most people will get ports from. The run is fairly straightforward from either the Wizard Spires or the Druid Rings. You are heading straight for Paineel. The zone is actually found within the city, and that's another good thing because that means everybody can bind right at the zone line, or in that little alcove just above the zone line. So melee, if you head into the Hole, make sure you grab a bind from someone just outside. They have to be able to be in your group to be able to bind you. But other than that, it's a really straightforward run through Tox Forest. Nothing here will attack you, nothing here will harm you in any way. You've way out leveled this area already if you're coming to the Hole. The only obstacle to really worry about is the trees, so if you put an auto run on or you're following someone, be mindful because Everquest characters do really love to get stuck on trees and the smallest obstacles. Now when we zone into Paineel, you'll see there's actually 2 ways into the Hole, and one is right here on the edge. Do not jump in. Whatever you do, don't jump in. There's an agent at change here. That's if you're doing a raid for Master Yale in the Hole, which we'll cover shortly in another video. You just hail him and he'll open the instance, and that's how you do that. But the biggest thing about the Hole is don't just jump in because you will die. And funny thing, when I was filming this on Mischief, I saw someone just run straight in. I sent him a tell afterwards saying, hey, you know, was Master Yale up? And he's like, yeah, Ada DT. So it still happens even on a well advanced server like Mischief. And the number one piece of advice I can give you if you've never been here or you're going to the Hole for the first time is don't jump in, and this is what will happen. You jump in and you hit the zone line, and oh goody, going into the Hole, really excited to go get some XP. Love the new 64-bit client, it loads so fast now when zoning. You jump in, oh, there's a corpse, and bang, dead. In this case, I got by an elemental warrior right there because I did this on a level 1, but you will get by Master Yale's death touch, which reaches out there. So don't jump in there, otherwise you will die and you'll find yourself transported to bind. So what I've done here is I've gathered up some of the mobs you're going to be facing in the hole if you're XPing here. And firstly, apologies for the new models. In order to get this to work, I had to turn new models on. These are what I call like the easy group. They're either just straightforward tank and spanks, don't have anything about them. They're the lower levels, and they really shouldn't pose too much of a threat. Some of them might cast, like the visors, because they're weaker versions of some of the others. This next group tend to be the bulk of what you'll pull down below in the non-entrance camps and beyond the castle entrance. The wizards, the channelers, the harvesters, crusaders, they all tend to be mid-40s in level. They can cast on you, nukes and all that kind of thing. The capturer, if you're an enchanter that's leveling here, that's the one you'll want as a pet because it can do some wicked damage. And finally, the rock golems, they're the hardest ones in the zone. They can be like high 40s to low 50s in level. They hit like an absolute truck. They can be charmed. The low level ones can be charmed by a high level enchanter. If you have one of these as a pet though, make sure your cleric is watching your health and has a macro ready for a quick heal for you. And I only managed to grab one, but there's some undead as well that you'll see over at the castle kind of area, the undead area. There's nothing much to say about them. And of course, up here on his throne, Master Yale, another elemental. You're going to see a lot of elementals here as well. If you do have a pet, make sure a magician gives you a sword of runes as well, because they have a nice proc where they do damage to elemental. You're increasing the damage you're doing, you're killing faster, getting more XP. So let's take a look at where you'll typically hunt. When you come in, if you're coming the right way, this is where you'll end up. You'll end up in this pool of water. If you go in the wrong way, then you're probably dead. And you'll see there's mobs right at the entrance. Way back in the day, I used to love coming here, or even on P99. You can come here as a magician and farm these little elementals right here. It was pretty okay XP for the time back in the day, but for what we do on TLP, it's way not sufficient. So we want to be at one of the good XP camps. So you're coming to this corridor. You do have to be mindful. Some of these mobs will be seeing Viz, and they will see you, and if they'll break your invis, then the rest of them will come charging at you, and you're probably not in for a very good time. Having said that, always have invis up when you're moving through this zone. Have a couple of pots ready to click, the instant pots when you need it. So you'll kind of progress. If you come into, let's say, the first camp, you'll progress slowly down here, checking all the mobs, making sure they don't see invis. If they do, you've got kind of two options, and that's run like hell and then die, or you zone out pretty much if they're going to get you, and your group's going to have to clear him. When you come down a corridor, you'll come to a section like this. This is where the first kind of rock golems can be, and Morsi and Viz, and that leads to the upper part of the tower, but we don't really hunt there on a TLP as an XP camp. Instead, what you'll want to do is kind of just stick to the left. As you see, there's a little path that goes down. Again, just be mindful about all the mobs because they could be around. You'll see there's this big outdoor area, but if you carry on around, now this is where it's make or break, because if you jump down from here, you cannot get back to the zone out. That is it. You are in the zone. You can't follow this path back up. You've no way to get back up. Levitate doesn't work in the hole, so once you're in, you're kind of in. And you'll run along here, and right here is the camp, and we call this camp Castle Entrance. Now, there's no real bad camp in the hole. Every single camp can get you to level 50. I've dinged 50 at this camp. It's not the most efficient because the mobs tend to be slightly lower level, but you'll be killing from all around this outdoor area. You'll see there's mobs knocking around, sometimes hiding behind the rocks, hiding behind the little alcoves behind the building. This is where you're going to be pulling mobs from as they spawn, but these are the lowest level mobs in the zone. Not fantastic for XP. You'll also be pulling from in here. Again, just look around, make sure there's no mobs knocking around. There's the first flighty fiend over there. All these little rooms can have mobs in, and all these little rooms can also have named in. The names can spawn pretty much anywhere where mob spawns. Any of them can be a placeholder. Not that it matters too much because they don't really drop any loot. The loot we're after typically drops from the trash anyway. You see there's tons of mobs around in this little fireplace room where the elementals hang out. All these little rooms. Again, you open the door, you've got to be ready. Oh, see, there's a name there. You've got to be ready to get aggro and run back as fast as you can. Capturer there as well. They make excellent pets. If you are a lower level in enchanter, they do a lot of damage. So yeah, that's kind of where you typically pull from as a castle entrance group. You can just run straight back. The other corridor also leads down to the other camp, so we'll check that out in a little bit. You do get people running through. You have to be mindful that they might bring mobs with them as well. So I like to keep back right against this wall to avoid any trains. Alright, where you will also be hoping to pull from it as a castle entrance group is down here. This is the jails, the Ratman jails, where you'll find all the Ratmen. It might look a little bit different on this video because what actually happens with the hole is when the LDON, Lost Dungeons of Narath expansion drops, that is when the hole gets a revamp and some of the mobs change, some gargoyles kind of appear, some of the position of mobs change, and the leveling slightly alters and the tuning. So sometimes in this video you might notice things that are a little bit different than what you will usually see on live when it's hole 1.0 on a TLP. Like some of these might have doors in and stuff like that. There's Carradine, he's part of a quest, we'll cover him off later, and yeah, you'll usually find a very locked door there. You'll find mobs down here to pull most of the Ratmen, and you just run them back up. Easy peasy. Just make sure you don't go down the wrong path. I've done that plenty of time and ended up almost at the sword camp. So there we go, that's the castle entrance camp. A nice little XP camp. Lots of lower level mobs to kill. You're not going to face too many golems, so the XP can flow. The next camp that you will see people go into a lot is the sword camp. So starting off from the castle entrance camp, you are following the other path. So instead of opening the door to go down to the prison, we're going to follow the path around it. It's very linear, so you can't get lost at this point. You will, however, encounter mobs on these stairs, and they can see invis and they can be rock golems. The best advice to do is, if you're going down to meet a group, say at sword or beyond, and there's a golem there, I have at times just ran to about this point and then intentionally died, allowing the group to just retrieve my corpse and res me without training them and without causing a huge problem for that group. So that's usually what I would do. And this is why the camp has its name, the sword camp, because there's a sword in a rock in the water. And this is where a group would normally camp, right against this wall, and the reason being is because there's limited respawns. I think there's only one mob that can spawn against here, so you're pretty safe when you pull in. Now, in this camp, you're going to see a lot more rock golems, so it's very common sometimes to get 2 rock golems per pull. There's one room where you can certainly get 3 as well, and those are the ones, if you are pulling, you're going to want to warn your group about before you pull them. So there's also the chance of spawning more of the named mobs, and I think it's really cool. This camp, it kind of overlooks the whole city down below, the lower parts of the city down below, which is really cool. And this is another camp again where there's lots of side rooms off to the side where you're gonna find mobs. It looks like a little library or something there that's been wrecked, and the pullback is just to this entrance and back straight to the group. There's no real issue with pathing at this camp. You won't really encounter any difficulties or mobs running off and pulling trains. You can come down here, this door, some of these doors are typically locked. You can pull through them by just sticking your face against the window. Sometimes they'll follow, and yeah, this is a room that I don't think I've ever really seen on TLP with the fires and the little throne up there. Very interesting camp. Lots of mobs that you can pull, lots of different directions, and you can go to, and the respawns fairly quick. You've also got the option of pulling back up towards the castle entrance and also down towards the kind of lower city. So just be prepared. You're going to see more rock golems here. They're going to hit hard. Here casters can't do a lot to them either. Now, heading down to the next couple of camps in the lower city portion. Starting at Sword, you're going to come down this tunnel. Again, it's linear, and I love this little feature that I've never really noticed, the little windows there. Really cool little feature. You're going to encounter mobs all the way along here. That corridor down, maybe a couple of mobs, and usually a ratman. And right inside that door either side is where you'll usually find a rock golem or an elemental. And again, if you have aggro, this is the spot you probably want to die in, rather than train a group who are going to be sat right ahead of you there. So the last thing you want to do is run in and then train your group, and no one's going to want to be your friend then. But this is the camp. This is where the group will usually sit. They're going to get their backsides wet, and they're going to sit down and med and fight up to here. Casters right at the back, healers at the back, and the tank sat in about the middle. Now, I really like this camp, and this building is why the camp gets its name. It's called the Slab Camp, because this shop is called the Slab. And what I really like about this camp is there's so much variation in where you're going to be pulling from. You know, you're not pulling from the same 3 rooms every time. You're going into all these what used to be shops. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things to see, like all the damage and whatnot. Corridors that lead down into basements with then have sub rooms in, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of really interesting like little nooks and crannies to it that if you're pulling, you know, you're not doing the same repetitive pulling. You're gonna be pulling from different areas, and it helps keep it fresh. You're gonna be seeing a lot of elementals of the easier variety, and the others like harder ones, and other things like golems, like in this clothier's shop. I don't think the golem's going to be selling you any clothes today, but again, it's one of these little shops with some interesting little things to see, and mobs all scattered around in the side rooms. Like I said, I find this like lower city area zone really interesting. All these kind of old shops, old ruined shops inhabited by these elementals and golems. And one of the reasons I really like this camp is it's a relatively small area, but it's relatively dense with mobs, which means the pulls are kind of small. Even if you push into this kind of second area, you know, there's a lot more shops around, again with mobs in. But you run back to the water pit, to where we camp at Slab, is never that long. So your pulls are not going to be like spread out, few and far between. They're going to be coming, you know, often. Your monk should be heading out before the mob in camp dies. Any good monk should be doing that to get the next pull in. It means, you know, they can pull faster and from further away, which keeps your XP up. And it's no matter where you go, even if you push into this kind of second area, the run back is never all that far, because your tank's going to be here and they're going to be picking them up. Alright, the final camp in the city area, we're going to head to it from the Slab area, and again, this is not a safe run as often as golems, so groups typically clear. If you're replacing someone, again, they might be keeping up and the mobs might be down, but again, you might have to run off and die and then be dragged and res. But this is how you get there. If you just kind of follow this this path, and then sticking to the right wall once you're going through the door, you'll see that there are mobs here, sometimes a golem, and you can pull yourself into just about here. And this is what we call the docked camp, because there is a dock there, a dock to nowhere, believe it or not, because down there only leads down to Master Yale's pit, and you don't want to go down there. So you will be set up here. Your monkey's going to be pulling mobs here. Generally there's more golems that you'll pick up at this camp. I typically don't prefer it over Slab, because it's a longer pull to the group, or at least it feels like a longer pull to the group, but there's a lot more of a bigger area that you can pull from. The biggest risk at Slab is of course rock golems with 2 or 3 that can come in at once. Hopefully you've got an enchanter who can charm one, and a cleric on the ball watching their health, because enchanters can unfortunately go down really quick when they've got a golem for a pet, if they're not constantly watching for it and prepared when the charm breaks. I mean, they might just get really unlucky as well with a few resists. You're never too sure, but this is normally a camp where a lot of people will come to level up to 50 on a TLP. And the last camp that people usually use to level up is the Undead camp. Now, this camp can be relatively easy to get to. if your hill's not up, because the quickest way there is to drop down a pit and then take the path back. However, you can get there from from the docks, and this is where we're starting at here from the lower city. You see this ruined gate, you kind of go through it. Don't know what broke out, but something really unhappy kind of did, and you follow this tunnel round. And again, there's going to be mobs up here, so if you're a group that's moving down to Undead, you probably want to go down together and clear. Now, the biggest problem with coming down here is it's clear. It's going to take you from entrance anywhere from like 30-40 minutes all the way down this tunnel. Now, I don't mind clearing down to a camp 1. It's like an old school dungeon kind of crawling kind of feeling, which is kind of fun. You're not always sat in one spot, you know, it keeps everyone interested, and also it's all XP, and the XP in the whole is pretty good. And then here you'll see we have the undead zone and the undead area of the zone. Again, it's not my favorite one to come to. Normally, you know, I've got a mage in tow. Well, they're not going to be as good here because I'm not fighting elementals. Now, the looting hall works a little bit differently than pretty much every other zone we've looked at, in that these sets don't drop off names. In fact, the names typically drop nothing. It all drops from trash, and really it's the armor sets we're looking at. Now, these armor sets, they're not great. I mean, generally it's just stuff that you get while you're waiting to go up to Plane of Hate, and you need something to fill those slots. It does suffer from the early Everquest weird kind of itemization, where they give you stats that you don't want or need, and you know, the loam encrusted choke is a fine example of that. And the same with the sash right here. Now, great to fill a slot, and also good to give to an alt if you're leveling one up. Now, the exception to that though is the pants. The pants are best in slot for ink casters during classic. So if you see a pair drop and you're an Inkcaster, make sure you be rolling and picking one of them up. And again, some of the other stuff is just itemized so terribly, like these boots. You know, you're never going to wear them. You're going to be wearing a set of golden Ifriti boots. The robe is also decent if you can get hold of one. Again, it'll tide you over until you can get your set either from Plane of Hate or Plane of Fear. The best robe that you usually get in Classic, and you'll see drop, is the Crimson Robe of Adeline, and that drops in Fear. The other set that we see is the Withered Leather set. For leather wearers, that's your druids, that's your shamans, and I think also clerics can wear it. Not that they ever really should, because they should be wearing plate. This withered armor set you don't see as often because it only drops from the undead in the hall, which is one camp, and it's tougher and it's harder to get to, so not as many people really go there. And again, it's kind of similar to the plate stuff. Some of the itemization is weird, you'll never wear it. Some of the stuff's actually not terrible and will tide you over again until you get your armor sets from Hate or Fear. The difference in this case though is the tunic is actually best in slot for druids. There's not one better. It comes with an absolute ton of mana on it. Shamans, they're either going to want this or maybe the rune etched breastplate, which doesn't have as much mana but has a ton of stamina and whiz, which is good for shamans. So if you're one of those people that likes to come to undead, or you really want to get some of these pieces, you know, you will be able to get them. It just means coming down to the undead area in the hall, which again is the hardest camp to get to, and certainly so if your L's up, because you're going to get death touched if you fall in, which means the only other way to go is to crawl all the way through the city. Some of the other items that you can get, which again drop randomly throughout the zone, are some weapons. The Smouldering Brand is the infamous twink item that you will give to any alt, because that proc hits on level 1, and if you look at the proc, it's doing direct damage upon hit, so it makes going through the first couple of levels an absolute breeze, because you're just going to be instant killing a lot of things as soon as that lands, or really shortening the time it takes to kill. Mudman Enforcer again is good twink item, not as good as the Smouldering Brand. And there's a bow as well. Having a bow is always great. I played a warrior on Mischief. I loved having a bow because it helped me tag mobs on incoming. Next up we have the Hunter achievements. These are a bit weird in the hole, especially for hole 1.0, in that they're all kind of elementals for the most part, and they can all spawn pretty much anywhere in the zone. So here is a list of what you will need to kill in order to get the Hunter achievement, which is known as the Hunter of the Ruins of Old Paineel. Like I said, all these elementals can spawn anywhere. Elementals can. Obviously the undead, anywhere where undead spawn in their little tower. The only one I'm not 100% sure about is if it's spawning is Retseth Tretzi, and you'll see him in a second. I've never seen him on a TLP being up, but he must spawn at some point in hole 1.0 because he has loot, and he's definitely not a 2.0 mob. This is where I found him. I managed to get him spawn right down here, and then like in the Revenant kind of area. And interesting thing is, he actually drops some loot. I think he's like the only named in the zone that has a loot table, and it's not terrible stuff. There's a chest piece for a monk, which have a decent amount of strength on it, and a pretty decent range actually for classic. There aren't many range items in the game that give stats at this point, so anytime you can get an item from range that has stats, you know, pick it up. I just can't remember ever seeing him on a TLP. So what quests can you do while you are hunting in the hole? With it being a Kunark era zone, there's quite a lot of epic pieces to do for some quests. But first we're going to look at Kajar the Mighty. Now Kajar here has lost his robe, and you can find him right down in the Revenant area, up the stairs in a side room. He's not KOS, but he's lost his robe, and it's actually a pretty cool piece where the robe he's lost is the shiny metallic robe from Lower Guk. And when you give him the shiny metallic robe, you've got a choice. You'll either get the shiny hunk of metal, which is the booby prize and sells for about 20 plat to vendors and isn't used for anything else, or you'll get the shiny robe of the underfoot, which is the good prize for doing a quest, which is an upgrade on the shiny metallic robe from Lower Guk. The problem is that the shiny robe on the underfoot still is not very good, and the loam encrusted robe is still better, the robe with the kedge is better, and of course the plane of fear or hate is still better. It's a cool little quest that, you know, relates a couple of zones that you may have travelled in. I've never done it in a TLP, and it was kind of fun to see it while recording this video. And I should say, it took me 6 shiny metallic robes to be handed in until I got the actual good robe. Maybe I just had bad luck, or maybe it's just rare, but it's a lot of effort to go through for a robe which is slightly better and still, you know, not very good. But, you know, thanks anyway, Kajar. You got your robe back and gave me another one, which is kind of nice, I guess. The elemental binder, this can drop from any elemental in the zone. Magician only item. Typically when magicians get it, they put it on their head because it's probably an upgrade at this point in the game. However, it is also a required item for the magician epic, the Orb of Mastery. And then for paladins, you're going to be here to camp the Keeper of the Tombs. He spawns on this throne, kind of right down in the Revenant area again, and he drops a sword that you're going to need for your Fiery Defender, which is the Paladin epic. He's not very hard, he does ham touch, he is slowable though, so you know, take a group of your buddies down and get him done. Rangers, you'll also be after someone in the hole as well, and that's Jael the Wretched. You'll find him down in these tunnels, kind of minding his own business, sat on this rock. He's not KOS, so none of the group has any reason to harm him. He's just chilling out here. But he gets really mad when you give him the shiny ball. Now, the shiny ball you would have done earlier as part of the epic quest, and when you give him this shiny ball, he changed from being the Wretched to Jael the Insane, and he equips his hammer, and then he wants to start going to town on you. He will aggro straight away and start beating you with his hammer. just like that. So just be wary of that. Make sure you're ready to go when you engage him. He's not very hard, you know, at all. A couple of your buddies should be able to get him down no problem at level 50. And there's the hammer that he drops, which you'll need as part of your epic. Shadow Knights, you have the most to do in this zone. You'll be looking for a Ratman guard to drop the Dusty Tomb, but on a TLP you can actually skip this part because all the Dusty Tomb gives you is some faction that you need. So there is a workaround where you just give another 1000 plat to the ogre and you get the additional faction that you need, so it's skippable. The next part is one of those really cool rooms in Everquest. This is the old bank, it's called the Strong Box, and behind the bank you kind of carry on down and you come to a fake wall which you kind of go through, and there's 3 chests in there. Now one of these chests hold a key which opens a cell for the next part of this quest. In the Ratman cell area between castle entrance and sword, you will find in his cell Caradon, or you might not, because he's kind of a rare spawn. He spawns 8 hours after being killed and between 5 and 14 hours after a server restart, so you can't always see it up, and he's typically camped. But what you'll be wanting to do when you find him is give him the cell key. And when you do, Kai Renner will actually spawn right by his side. And now these are going to be locked to you for doing the hand-in, so you do have a bit of time to kill them. No one's going to rush you down for them, and both of them will immediately attack you. And what you'll be wanting to do is kill them both and loot the blood and the heart from Kai Renner. Sorry, Kai Renner. But Shadow Knights, you're still not done with the haul. A large chunk of your epic is actually done here. So in the undead area, you're going to be looking for these fallen heretics. Now these guys are placeholders for the mob you want, which is the Ghost of Glowknot. Now when you find him, you're going to give him a Dark Shroud. The Dark Shroud you got from giving the blood of Kai Renner to Mal. He gives you the Dark Shroud, you give it to the Ghost of Glowknot. And when you do that, the Mummy of Glowknot spawns, and you'll be wanting to attack the mummy and take its head and mummy wrappings. And this is one of the last parts of your epic quest. There's not much left to do after this, only one fight, and you'll be pretty much done with your epic quest. A lot of it's done in the hole. Alrighty, that's kind of it for a rundown of the hole. On a new TLP in Classic, as long as you're not racing, this is probably the zone that you'll hit level 50 in. It's probably the best zone to do it in and the quickest zone to do it in. You'll probably pick up a few loot pieces while you're at it if you're an Inkcaster or a level wearer. A really interesting zone. I think it really shows the evolution and the progress the devs made at the time in really making the zone feel less like just corridors like Lower Guk kind of does and Sol B. They're very cramped, very narrow, whereas this one, it does still have that, but then it opens up into these like super big areas buried down in the old city. You know, there's a lot of variation in like the camps. It's just unfortunate that there's not really a lot of variation in the mobs. You're going to be sick of seeing elementals, you're going to be sick of rock golems. Maybe you want to break and go kill some undead, and that's why people do the undead sometimes for a change. There's not a lot, and there's also not really a lot of variation in the colour palette. It's kind of either greys or it's brown, and after a while you kind of crave some colour after you spend it in the hole. But overall it's a fun zone. Magicians can have a lot of fun here as well, which is kind of rare for them. And you get these glorious shots like that. You really do get a feel that you are underground, that you are in this ruined deep city. And of course the hole does become used in another expansion. He gets a revamp in Lost Dungeons of Narath, and then it's the entrance for a whole expansion with the Underfoot, with the entrance to Brell's West, which is hidden away behind Master Yale. So I've kind of shown you now the typical leveling zones that you will hit within the first week or two if you're pushing to get to level 50. It's a fairly static route that most take. It's a zone like Crushbone into Unrest, into Lower Guk, and then finish off in the hole. So what I want to do now is kind of show you some alternatives to those routes, because there's a lot of other zones out there which are a lot of fun, not very populated, where you can get some loot and do something a little bit different if you're interested in doing that. And I'm talking about zones like Mistmore, Kazik Thule, Split Paw, even weird zones like Kera Isle, or even some outdoor zones that not many people go to level, where you can get a lot of trade skill material. There's a whole host of options in Everquest beyond this typical route, and I really hope you stay with me on this journey while we explore some of those zones, so that when a TLP opens, you're not always stuck to this very static route that the majority of players go down. Especially if you've got a few friends that want to see something different, or maybe you're a boxer and want to do something different by yourself as well. So thank you very much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and you found my in-depth look at the whole useful. Feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That really helps. I really want to grow this channel and continue doing these kind of more deep dives into the zones of Everquest. Next up, I'll probably be looking at Master Yale, because he tends to be the first raid boss that guilds will look at. So I'm going to look at some of what we do and what strategies we do to get him down, and what loot that he drops as well. Down below you can find all my links to my Twitch channel, where I stream Everquest usually, and some other games, my Twitter and Patreon, all that kind of good stuff. Any support is very much appreciated. So I am the Brick Canuck, and as always, have yourselves a fantastic day.